Great. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for stopping by, and welcome to another episode of Getting a Bit Better with Bitters. Yeah. Um, so I don't really have too many questions to go over today. So if anyone has anything that they would like help with, feel free to mention it in chat or typing exclamation point submit at any time, whether I'm streaming or not. We'll pull up the link to be able to submit a question, and I will get around to answering that either, well, if it's today, I could probably answer it today. Otherwise, I will answer it by my next stream. Well, next Monday night stream, that is. All right. Oh. All right. Um, all right. So today, had a couple questions. The first up is this one here is actually from Sydney. She asks, "What's the best way to gear up a new character other than being boosted through carries?" All right. Well, um, not fixed either. 1 second. Sorry. There we go. All right. So I would think probably the best way. Obviously it depends on where you're starting from. Um, so I'm assuming this is also like going from like a hit max level point because other than that, it's going to be like heirlooms and that sort of stuff is for, just gearing up or whatever. But like once you hit 120, I would say the first thing to do, go to WoW here, uh, is going to be checking to see um, like extra zones are up. And I would say the very first thing to do would be heading to Arathi and Darkshore. Ideally, Arathi first, I would say, just because, you know, if you do happen to get any drops, like, those mobs are going to be not as hard, I would say, to kill at, like, super low gear level. Like, probably going to be, like, I don't know, 280 or something when you hit 120. Once you do, just type, or press I, look at the pre-made group finder, custom find groups, and just look for rares, or rare, whatever. So like right now with Darkshore, Darkshore rares were mode off. Don't be afraid if it's a raid, because it's just even going to be easier. You don't have to be like in a 5-man party or something for farming the rares. You could be in any size group. So like joining, a rares group, go around, kill all the rares. And Darkshore, the item level I believe is 355. Or like any of the rares that in like if you have a gear piece drop. Um, and then a Wrathy I think is 340. So that's gonna be the first step. That's gonna get you like the best gear that you can get straight away. That isn't going to scale. Now what I mean by that is you don't want to go doing like world quests right away because um, you want to get your like average item level up first. If you like your average item level, like once you reach like certain breakpoints, it's gonna scale up your world quest. Like even the ones that don't say that they scale up, a lot of them do. Like any of the ones that say um, like this one here, over here. Like the item level is 355 plus. That means it's going to like scale on its item level, like based on, um, or it's going to scale based on your max item level. I believe it's like max ever equipped. I don't think it has to be like what you currently have. Like if you've vendored something, then I think it's fine. But so you want to do all of the sources that are going to get you like static gear first. So like I said, the Arathian Dark Shore is definitely going to be first because those are going to be the highest item level pieces, and you know, you in a group of people, you guys are all going to be able to kill it, kill these mobs pretty easily. After that, if you can get into heroics, do that. You probably won't be able to yet, but otherwise, just doing some dungeons. The main goal is just, again, you're not going to be able to contribute too much, but as long as you're just doing mechanics and that sort of stuff, most normal mode, like normal groups, aren't really going to care too much. I mean, as long as you're not like pulling extra trash and like wiping the group. If you can't do that much DPS or something, you should still be fine, even like with no gear at, you know, like a 280, 300 item level. Actually, I don't even know if you can do it at. Oh yeah, you could do normals. So yeah, dungeons to try to gear up. Depending on how long of like a time window you're looking at here, you could start doing world quests after that if you're still short of like 325 to be able to do heroics for your item level. Like the some of the things you'll again like you have to look at like what items are dropping. The Azurite items, like if it's a cache, it depends on like what zone it's in. With the exception of champions, those ones are kind of give you like a completely random piece. It can be even like dungeon drops. But you want to obviously like gear up your lowest slots first. And like once you gear up like your lowest slots and bring those up, then that's going to bring up your average item level the most, which is going to make all of your rewards like the bigger rewards. And again, like as you're increasing your item level, just be sure to check back on your world quests to see like what has changed and stuff, because you might not even notice it, and something that might not have been an upgrade before that was like a 310 piece. So you had like a 315, it might be a 320 now. So just be sure to check back with it. The other thing that you're definitely going to want to do is go to Philippus, like if you go to like the portal, and go upgrade your neck. So depending on if you've leveled another character or not, just going in here, talking to Magni, you'll be able to upgrade your item level. You upgrade your neck 40 item levels to start, and then the next step is going to be to do like a little mini quest line thing. It again doesn't take very long, and again easily soloable. I think it's Brother's Request or something like that. It's somewhere around in this area of Nazmir, or a Brother's Help or something like that, I think it's called. And that will give you an extra 15 item levels on your neck. So altogether, it's 55 item levels on your neck, which is a really nice boost. Speaking of neck, of the artifact neck, you do want to make sure you're working on increasing its item level as well through your Azurite power. Again, depends on like what event, like what stage the warfronts are on. But if there's like turn-ins, doing those are absolutely worth it. 500 rep each, or not rep, 500 Azurite power each for the 3 quests. That adds up real fast. Any of the other Azurite quests you can do. But gearing up, I would say, your first priority should be on gear. Don't worry about like farming just straight Azurite to get up to increase your neck level. Just try and get some gear first, and then you can work on, bringing your neck up after that. If you didn't know, as well, if you haven't like rolled a new character in a while or anything like that, once you hit 120, all of the like lower tiers of Azurite, of like to increase like a neck level, they only take 1,000 Azurite each. So that's for, I don't even know exactly what point that goes up until. But it doesn't start getting up until like the, really high amounts until quite a bit later on. But while it's just 1,000 Azurite, like, 1,000 Azurite is going to give you a neck level increase like every time. Let's see. Yeah, I mentioned dungeons, neck, Darkshore, Wrathy. Once you are able to get to the point of doing heroics, obviously you want to try and do that. That's at 325 item level. It might not be like super easy to get to that point yet. That's kind of like the slightly harder point, is that going from like the 300 through 15 up to 325. That I would say is probably the hardest part of like increasing your item level, if you're trying to do it quickly, that is. Once you do break that point to be able to get into heroics, obviously you can farm those, as much as you can. I think they're most of the groups have like still really high geared players in them, so even just doing a random pug wouldn't be too bad. So doing that for a while, that's going to get you, up into 330, 335, something like that. At this point, I mean, again, obviously this depends on how long of a timeline you're looking at. Then you definitely want to finish any more world quests that you have, to try and keep pushing yourself a bit higher. The goal is eventually to get up to 350. At that point, you can queue for Battle of Dazar'alor, Raid Finder stuff. Try and get some of those pieces, like the Azurite pieces and such. Those would be really nice. Because there's not a ton of opportunities before that to get high item level Azurite pieces. Emissaries. That's another thing that is going to scale based on your item level. So emissaries as well, any ones that reward gear, you want to try and save those until as late as possible in like your gearing scheme, I guess. Once you can get to the point, once you're in like that 340 area, 340 350, you might be able to find some Mythic Zero groups to start doing. Like this week, it was actually a really good week to do that with the emissary, or not emissary, actually it's the Emissary of War quest to clear 4 mythic dungeons. There's tons and tons of groups doing the Mythic Zeros, so it was pretty easy to find group for that, I found, at least. Those do have a loot lockout, so you would only really want to try and do each of those once. I know some groups will just like farm the same one several times in a row, which is fine, but just for like the gearing up, you aren't really looking to do that. You would just want to try and go through each of them once. So yeah, after that point, once you've started doing like the Mythic Zeros and stuff, by the time you get through a whole set of those, you should be able to start doing Mythic, some Mythic Plus at that point. That's really just going to depend on your skill level, like what level you start with doing. If you can clear a heroic dungeon and you aren't having any problems with doing heroics, jumping up to a mythic isn't really much different. And a mythic +2 is basically the same thing as a mythic 0. Um, I mean, obviously it's a little bit of a change, but it's really not going to be any more difficult, so don't really be afraid to make that leap. It's really just it's really not a matter of being much more difficult content. It's more, just having the gear to be able to start doing it, and like being invited to groups and such. Yeah, and then obviously once you're starting to do some of the Mythic Plus, your item level is going to, just keep increasing from that point. Might take, more than a week to be able to do it, but, then you can start looking at, like, normal Battle of Desire lore, like group finder groups and such. And obviously from there, it just keeps going up. All right. So... Alright, on to the next question here. This one was actually from another person in a different stream, in Autosis' stream. He had asked, how can I look up good traits and stuff for Mythic Plus? Are there any guides? Alright, so for this, most of the guides do have like a section for Mythic Plus. So let's just go to a random wowhead like class guide. Go to all right. Actually, I'm gonna go straight to the Mythic Plus guides. All right. So depending on what spec you are, you could try checking for like one of the advanced tip guides. Otherwise, you can just look for a regular class guide. Whether it's like one of the Wowhead ones, in Icy Veins, they have usually have like a Mythic Plus section in theirs as well. Try and find one. Like if I go to Resto Druid, there's like a section for Mythic Plus tips. And this will have, like suggested talents, talk about Azurite a bit, all that sort of stuff. And then even DPSing, which I guess is more relevant. It's really only mainly relevant for Mythic Plus as a Resto Druid, but another thing there, or another source, I guess. So aside from that, another thing you can do is actually looking at logs. Not a ton of people, I guess, realize that you can upload, Mythic Plus as well to like Warcraft logs. Like it doesn't have to be just like a raid. So if you're going to, upload logs, you can do it for a Mythic Plus just easily. And yes, all these names of these bosses are insane and like going all the way back for like several tiers, like 14 months of despair. But alright, so if you go to the Mythic Plus section, I'm gonna click Statistics. Alright, so this is just gonna show like a breakdown of, by default, just going in, it's gonna show like the breakdown of damage, well, I guess points, like in the first window here. I change it to like another percentile, like 95th percentile, looking up a bit higher. But now this section right here is what I wanted to bring your attention to. Right here where it says all classes, just like as you would do it if you were looking up like raid statistics stuff, you can go in here and go to your spec. So let's say warrior, protection, and then like Azerite powers, talents, or trinkets. So let's go with talent. So this is going to show like a breakdown of like the common talents that are being used in Mythic Plus. So like this first row, like Into the Fray, most popular, then Impending Victory, and Punish. But if you look at the total parses, like that's going to give you a good clue of how often it's being used. Like, you know, huge, like 99% of the parses are using Into the Fray, compared to Impending Victory or Punish. But if you wanted to go through and look through talents this way, that's another source of getting that information. And if it's something that is kind of close that you're not really sure on, you can also check like the actual rankings in Mythic Plus. This is going to be, I think, more useful looking at specific dungeons. So let's say look at like Resto. Actually, I can look at some of his stuff right here. If on a name like it has their has like the drop down arrow, like you can click that and quickly see like their gear and traits and talents and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So this is an example for like King's Rust. This is a really high key. If you're trying to look for like a lower range of keys, you can do that as well. So for like, you want to look at a specific keystone level, you could look at that, or for specific affixes. Because obviously, traits or talents or trinkets could change. Like what you'd want to be using on a different week could very easily change depending on the affixes. Like for example, just in general, like if I go to all dungeons. Let's see. Go to hunters. So like if you were looking at, say, for example, hunters, a week that was necrotic. English log on a necrotic week. not gonna let me look at it. But anyway, that's the idea of it. It's just that if you end up looking up logs that, like for example, a necrotic week, you're gonna see a lot of hunters using like binding shot to help assist with the tank, whereas on a non-necrotic week, not going to be nearly as necessary. Most of the time, you're probably using post haste, like in raiding. Um, but again, that same type of thing is going to be, you know, something that you might find in other classes as well, like druids, whether they'd have mass entangle. Like if they're doing King's Rest, they might have mass entangle for the first boss, whereas in another dungeon they might not take mass entangle. Um, but that's just another example of that. Um, all right. Well, does anyone have any other questions at the moment? Those are the only questions I actually had this week, but I mean, I can talk about other topics as well. Oh, I forgot to mention, Enma222, Rumbledore Wow, and Hot Eatos. Thank you all for the follows. Oh, well, let's try talking about a random topic here. Great. Output. All right. So let's see what I have in that topic here. Buffs and debuffs, thinking cooldowns, cast an active time, or resource efficiency, such as mana rage, etc. All right. Where to start? I guess syncing cooldowns would work. Alright, so let's find a random log of mine. That is an example to start. One Mechator progression. Oh, alright, so if you look at like Aspect of the Wild and Primal Instinct, those two are actually both the same thing. It's just a trait from it. But like if you see, for example, like my trinket, Golden Luster, that's the King's Rest trinket. That has a 2-minute cooldown as well. So there are certain cases where overall for the raid's benefit, it's more important to have more burst for like a certain event that might happen in the fight, like say if an ad spawns at I guess this tier. Good example would be Grong, the robots that spawn. You could pop all your cooldowns in the pool and potentially get extra uses total throughout the fight, but mechanically, it's probably going to be better to use your cooldowns on killing the first robots that spawn at 15 seconds in. Now, say say if it's heroic or something, or I guess last tier, Fetid Devourer. You could use your cooldowns on like you couldn't like say a 2 minute. I'm just gonna use 2 minute as the example here. Say if there was an ad that spawned less than 2 minutes apart, like you could use it on the first set, and then say you couldn't get it on the second set, and then you could use it on the third set again. All right. If everyone did that, then that second set where no one had cooldowns on, that ad might not be killed in time or whatever the case may be. Obviously, you need to sync cooldowns throughout like the whole group rather than just looking at it like an individual player. You might see a log that has all the top DPS are using their cooldowns on the first and the third because that is obviously going to be like the best case. If there's only 3 waves of ads, you have cooldowns for 2 of those waves of ads. That's going to be better for parsing, as opposed to just having it for the second set or something like that. But another thing that you can do while you're doing that is offsetting your cooldowns a little bit. So, say like back to Grong, like how you have like an ad in Mythic Grong, you have ads at like 15 seconds, then 2:15, then 4:15. So if you're using like 2-minute cooldowns on the first set of ads, then the second time you'll have 2-minute cooldowns, but then you also have you could be using like your second potion there, or your potion, depending on when your group uses Lust or Time Warp or whatever. You could be syncing up more things to stack it to do even more damage during that window. So whether or not you want to use like all of your cooldowns all at one spot is also going to depend on what the rest of the group is doing, because you don't want to, I guess, make that isn't as stacked harder for the group, and making that more of a stress point in the fight, and making it more likely for the group to wipe there. So like, but again, that's something to consider. You have to look at what everyone's doing, not just yourself. But if you are just going for like maximum output from that point of view, and like parsing or whatever, then it is going to be obviously best to stack as much as possible whenever you can, as long as you're not losing a use. Looking at here on Mechatoric, this I guess isn't a great example for like not losing out on usage, because first of all, this isn't a kill on this log that I'm showing right now, and the Mechatoric encounter also has cases that make it so that you can't use cooldowns. Like if you're in a robot, like your cooldowns might be up, but you can't really use them because you can't DPS during that. Or like during this gap here would have been like their air phase, and cooldowns wouldn't be up there. I mean, they might be up there, but they're not usable there because there's nothing to attack. But in general, you do want to use your cooldowns stacked with other things. So like with mine here, got Bestial Wrath, Wild, Trinket, Lurking, Bloodlust, Potion, those are the main controllable things. I'll put Prolonged Power here as well. So this pull is actually just one of our earlier progression pulls. We weren't really, we were told that we didn't have to pre-pot on it, so I was just using Prolonged Power. But since it actually happened to end up being like one of our better pulls, I just used the real pot near the end. Alright, so looking at like the syncing cooldowns here, on the pull, obviously I have like everything up that is controllable by me. Obviously Bloodlust isn't, but pre-potted with the potion, Berserking, Aspect of the Wild, and King's Rest Trinket at the same time, and Bestial Wrath. So at the very beginning, everything's up. So that's that's going to be common for pretty much everyone. but syncing those again later on is also really important. Um, so here, um, with Aspect of the Wild, there's so like Bestial Wrath has like a variable cooldown. It's gonna get shortened based on um, like our barb shot usage. That lowers the cooldown on it, and it's you can't 100% predict what its cooldown is going to be. You have a rough idea, but you can't guarantee it. So since Aspect of the Wild is like a straight 2-minute cooldown, you can play around knowing that you're going to have Aspect of the Wild at the 2-minute mark. And like here, I use this Bestial Wrath early to try to just not lose out on a usage of Bestial Wrath. Like I could have held this Bestial Wrath to have it line up exactly with this Aspect of the Wild. And that would have been more damage overall, but it also would have delayed Bestial Wrath by 15 seconds or something like that, which if that happened twice in a fight, that's going to be just like skipping an entire cast of Bestial Wrath for no reason. So I do use the Bestial Wrath, even though the aspect probably came up a little bit earlier. Here I actually use this Aspect of the Wild a little bit earlier, and I can't say for sure. I mean, I could look through like the VOD and check, but most likely, like the reason that I do that sometimes, like even if I know it's a little bit early for the next Bestial Wrath, it might have been because my stacks of Frenzy were about to fall off. My barb shot, like if I didn't have a barb shot charge, so I probably used this aspect a little early to keep rolling a 3-stack, so that I would have it going into the next Bestial Wrath as well. So it isn't a perfect sync right there, but it's close because I'm sure I had 3 stacks of Frenzy during that. So again, now looking at 3-minute cooldowns. Here again, like I was talking about, I could have saved like this 2-minute here and just not used it at all and just waited to the 3-minute mark, which probably would have been fine actually in this case, but it really depends on when we phase as well, because if I would have held it to here and then it wouldn't have been up when when we came out of the air phase, we probably actually would have come out right here. That's when we lusted. I judge by like the width of those, what that time would have actually been. Yeah, I think it would have actually been up. So I could have saved this Aspect of the Wild to use it here to sync up with the Bestial Wrath with the 3 minutes there, and it would have been back up again here. This Berserking as well. I probably could have held out on this as well, but at that point I would have probably ended up losing another charge because I just knowing roughly how long the fight was going to be. Like for a 3-minute cooldown, it's going to be needed to be used almost on cooldown, because we'll end up killing it. From this point, we should get like one more. I should probably get one more use of it, like right before the boss dies. So if I delay any of the Berserkings, which is for me actually a pretty minor cooldown anyway, just the racial. But the reason I did use these here, thinking with this Bestial Wrath, is so that I could fit it all during Lust as well, which is why I headed the potion as well. So here I have like all of my cooldowns synced again, just like how they were on the poll. But in general, you do want to stack cooldowns, just because it, say if you have something that is increasing your mastery, which increases all of your damage done, obviously that's going to be better to be used also with something else that increases, more damage done, and it just ends up being like, multiplicative, the benefits. They each increase each other's usefulness, I guess. As opposed to, say, I guess the simplest example is like, alright, say you have something that increases your crit chance by 100%, and something that increases your damage done by 100%. using both of those at the same time is going to increase your damage more than just using one of them at one time and then the other one like when that wears off. Um, I could, show actual numbers for this, but I guess technically it depends on how lucky you are with crits anyway. But um, like yeah, you could actually see that like doing the math for it. It's um, pretty easy to see that. Uh, get a log of Mythic Plus stuff real quick. All right. Trying to narrow it down to a certain spot. Basically the reaping packs. All right. All right. So this is an example of like in Mythic Plus trying to sync cooldowns as well. This is like, for example, like a reaping pack, where I'm trying to get my. I had a video of a. Maybe I do actually. Like, actually, yeah, it was last Monday. All right, so I should have this on stream.
Our apartment's haunted.
Don't remember exactly when it was. I guess I can check here. We did under out first. All right. So I guess actually I can talk about a couple weak cards. that I have here as well. All right, so here on my screen, I'm gonna go back just a few seconds before this. All right. Okay, so here is all right. So some of the weak words that I have going on right here, that I wanted to point out for Mythic Plus in particular. This is showing our current reaping percent, or our current percentage, and the next reaping, like mark. And then I guess this is a way to look at how much percent until the next reaping. And then to the left of this is the current percentage of the current percentage that we're going to get from this reaping pack. So all the mobs that we're in combat with. And I also have the mine set up so that on the nameplates, it also shows the percentage of each of the mobs to show how much percentage they each will give. So like say if we're in the middle of a pack and we have more mobs than what we need to actually push over, I can just easily glance at that to see like which mob is going to push it over in particular. Anyway, so yeah. Guessing here. Another thing that I actually use is a thing that when I mouse over mobs, certain mobs on a list that I have are auto marked with a raid marker. So you'll see like when we go to this next pack, I'll mouse over like these, just mousing over and marks them, so it makes it easier for like you can pre-assign interrupts and stuff like that. Like say, like in our group, say Tricky always interrupts a star, Bellshade always interrupts circle. Just by default. Like if we have like several mobs, you can do it that way, or you can just call out like, as we initiate with a pack. All right, but as you see, the reaping percent, this pack is worth 3.17. We need 3.89 still to push. So cooldown wise, you'll see that I'm holding on my Aspect of the Wild. I obviously could have used it here, but I wanted to wait. This next pack here, now the little numbers up here turn red, and this one over here turns red, and this also has a little glow on it. So lots of ways to make it so that I don't miss that we're gonna have a reaping here. Now during this pack, so on that last pack, I could have used Aspect of the Wild, like if we were pulling into more mobs this pack, and I could have like used, well, for me, multi-shot reduces the cooldown on it, so I could have done that. But I knew the next pack was going to be a smaller pack, like only 2 mobs, and multi-shotting wouldn't have done anything for reducing the cooldown, so I wanted to hold on it. But now during this pack, I'm also going to hold Bestial Wrath, so that I have absolutely everything for the reaping that's about to happen here in a second. So my thing also yells reaping when that's going to happen. Alright, so here, I made sure that... I try to make sure that right as we're gonna pop a reaping pack to do another barb shot, so we have my 3 stack of frenzy already rolling, and even if we end up we're gonna drop combat for a second, that's also a good time to I guess technically pre-pot in between the reaping mobs actually getting to you. But if I do it on back here or not. All right, so I actually, before we even like before all the mobs get here, because I know like in general, like if you are on a reaping pack, most of the damage is going to be front loaded. So the extra times that it time that it takes you to pop your cooldowns, while you might not get like full use out of it, whereas if you had all the mobs here, then you pop all your cooldowns, yeah, you might get most of the usage of all of your cooldowns then. But if you reuse it, then you can be like while the mobs are approaching, basically you're using that time to press, to use those GCDs of activating your cooldowns, so that when the mobs are there, you can start damaging instantly. So that's why, even though there's not many mobs here yet, I know they're gonna be here real soon. So you can see up here like Gale. I just used Gale Callers, um, Potion, Aspect of the Wild, and Beast of Wrath will be coming in just a second here. And there's Beast of Wrath and Berserking. So again, making sure I keep up Beast Cleave. This is just, a case of thinking all the cooldowns, damage, just, it's pretty high here, and we're actually pulling into other packs as well. But because of the fact that, like, so you'll see Aspect of Wild here, it's actually a 2-minute cooldown, but with, like, the rapid reload trait, every time you multi-shot, it reduces the cooldown. So this 2-minute cooldown is actually back up in time to literally just chain it again into, like, continuing off of the old one. So it's almost like 40 seconds straight of my 2-minute cooldown instead of its normal 20-second duration. So here, just as this mob is about to die, I'm going to try and refresh my frenzy on it. No, it's up there. Alright, so we have the reaping. Freezing. Starting cooldowns early before all the mobs are actually here, trying to interrupt the far things to get them into the pack. Point out real quick. This one is the Battle for Desiralor, like the dangerous mob thing. Name of it. Ep.8 dungeon targeted spells is the name of it on the Waco. With that, it will also draw a line to you. That's the red line that you'll see coming towards me if I'm the target of a Grave Bolt, which is useful. So like, either I could like feign death there or something if the mob wasn't going to die, or I can try interrupting or slaying that specific mob. Yeah. Example of trying to line up cooldowns and stacking them, I guess effectively, so that you're getting like the most use out of them, rather than putting them out. Sometimes it's definitely better to hold your cooldowns rather than just using them as soon as they come up. Um, okay, the majority of the time, it's better to do that. Unless, like I said before, it's a specific case where for the benefit of the group, it's better to hold so that um, there's adequate damage at each of the times in the encounter that the overall group needs, something to die. Right. Go with another topic here. How to get right preparation. I guess some of this stuff is already actually talking about. So like, you know, raid bots, Warcraft logs. Discords is that's another, like the class Discords. That's another place to look up information of stuff beforehand. Like I was talking about with trying to find out what your best setup is going to be for, like a Mythic Plus. And Warcraft logs, good way to see information about that. So before you're going to start stepping into, you know, uh, doing Mythic Plus, if you're trying to do like high keys, you can try looking at some of the guides. Definitely would suggest looking at streams of, popular, I guess popular isn't the best word to use, but reputable streamers from, trying to, from, I guess, whatever class that you are, or even not necessarily your class, just learning some of the routes of what some groups do. When you're doing that, though, it's important to be like mindful of the fact that what some groups are doing is comp dependent, like especially if you're looking at things that like, method EU or method A or any of the like MDI teams, like trying to replicate that stuff is not always, I would say the majority of the time is not going to be the best thing to do. You're going to need something that is repeatable for your skill level and the skill level of your group, as well as like your composition. You might not have a stealth, so you might not be able to do certain skips that they're doing, or you might not have the DPS to, clear the entire beginning of Freehold in one pull, on like an 18 with like a DK that's doing 800k DPS or something. Guides, whether for rating or for Mythic Plus, like I said, there's lots of them out there. How good, I guess, they are, or how like correct the information is going to depend on, the source of it. I hear a lot of people saying that like their class guide is wrong all the time, and to not go to, Icy Veins or Wowhead or whatever. So it's going to depend a lot on, I guess, how recently that information is updated. But then again, I've also found a lot of cases where people say that their class guide or whatever is wrong, and like I go back and look at some of that information and it's actually right, and that's what the top people are doing. The person who said that they're wrong is probably just not understanding the information from that guide correctly and might be taking it, out of context, or not. Might be just reading into it wrong. So it's a good idea though to, look at multiple sources. Like if you're going to look at a guide, don't just look at just the Icy Veins guide. Also look at, Wowhead guide, or like there might be sources of other guides, like in like Discords and such. So like, Peak of Serenity for monks and that sort of stuff. look at other places as well, just to try to see if some of that information matches up. If you have, like, if you come across something that you think might be kind of sketchy. Consumables, I went over that one before, but there's just a lot of things that there's a lot of things that it's good to buy it once at, like, or get it crafted or whatever at the beginning of the expansion, and most of the time it's probably just going to sit in your bags. But if you ever do come across a situation for it, not like it hurts to have it. Things like auto hammers. I don't think I've dropped it. I might have like dropped one auto hammer the entire expansion, but I have them if they're ever needed. Like drums, I usually don't end up needing to use, but I have them if they're needed. Lock picks for Toll de Gore gates. Whatever. There's lots of different things. Avalanche elixirs. A lot of that stuff is, 99% of the time you're never going to use it, but if you have it, you're prepared. It doesn't hurt to take it, I guess. Unless like you have literally no bag slots. Like I end up running into that sometimes, where I end up only having like 10 bag slots left. But I'm also like a hoarder, so I don't know. UI, macros, Ikora's add-on. So yeah, that's a lot to go into. Being prepared with like, say if you're going to be assigned to, like, blessing and protection on a tank, or let's say you're an opulence and you're going to, you need to op the person that gets coin shower outside of the raid. You need to make sure that you're prepared for that, because while you might be able to do it just getting, it being called out, I guess this also comes on a case of preparation of the raid leader who's setting this up, but making sure that you're able to recognize who has the debuff. Coin shower, it's super obvious, but, something else might not be as obvious. So that you can recognize, what the target is of whatever you need to do, and making it so that you can do it effectively. So like, I guess another opulence example is the Hex of Lethargy curse that goes out. Or actually not a curse, but magic debuff, sorry. Healers need to recognize who has that right away and be able to dispel them right away. So like on a healer UI, you need to make sure that you can see who has that debuff and not spend extra time like clicking on their name and then dispelling them, something like that. Like that's going to take 2 extra key presses. More, an ideal situation would be just either having like a click binding type thing, where like you just, like if you're holding shift and you right click on something, it dispels it or something like that. Or just having a mouse over macro, so that you can mouse over your raid frame. And yeah, I like do like a mouse over for my spirit mend. Like I can just mouse over myself.
Spirit mend.
Press R, spirit mend. Easy. See. But yeah, and then obviously Vicor's add-ons. I will say that it's very important to keep those things updated. Vicors, you might not think you need to update them, but a lot of times there's tweaks and fixes to them. There is a desktop app called the Vicor Companion. With that, it notifies you pretty, for the most part, usually when there's an update to any of the Vicors that you have that are like on Wago. But um, again, you just need to every once in a while go back and check things just to make sure that you know maybe if you're having like a performance like a game performance issue where you feel stuttery and that sort of stuff, it could just be something where it's just that your weak aura is outdated and it is using a whole bunch of extra CPU cycles and resources at a certain part in the fight, and that's what is making you slow down. You don't have to get rid of all of your weak auras and turn everything off, just because it's you have one weak aura that's messing you up. Obviously at that point you might need to figure out whatever works for you, but with a little investigation you can figure out what it is that is actually causing that and resolve that issue rather than you know not using something that can be a tool like having a weak aura that helps you perform more optimally. Same thing again with add-ons, exact same thing. Um, Making sure to keep those update, especially thing like during progression boss mods. Those should be like DBM or bigwigs, whichever you use. Um, for like the first 2 weeks of any raid tier, I update them like probably like I mean depends on if I'm in the middle of the game playing and if I needed it updated, but like definitely every time I log in, usually there's like an update just to tell you how often they're updated. It's like 3 to 4 times a day they're getting updated. Um, so yeah, definitely keep up with that. Um, Self-review. That's another thing I had under preparation. Um, just like how I did tonight, technically. I mean, I was looking back over my old gameplay. That's something that helps you set up for the next time that you're gonna play. Looking at like how I was looking at Mechatork. The like it might not seem like you might be able to fit in another cooldown at a certain place, but maybe you can. Like fit an extra DPS cooldown. Um, Knowing like fight lengths is something that you're really only going to be able to do after you've killed it with your group. You can have like an estimate most of the time, but like if you're trying to like really min-max, you know, performing as well as you can, you really do need to know like say if you're in the lab, say if you have 2 minutes left of a fight versus a minute left of a fight. Um, Using your cooldown at 2 minutes. Alright, well, let's change that example. Let's say you have like 2.5 minutes of a fight left. In that case, and like using a 2-minute cooldown, obviously you'd want to use it at the very beginning and as soon as it comes back up again, because you're going to be able to fit 2 in there. You don't want to lose a usage out. Now, if you only have like a minute left in a fight and you have that 2-minute cooldown up, yes, you could use it like right away as soon as it comes off cooldown, but it might be better to wait even later in the fight. Like that was something I did back on like and Forest Bearmathers, that's what it was. So like my damage would spike huge at the very, very end of that fight. Um, just because while like my cooldowns would come up, um, before the last few seconds of the fight, like my damage at the very, very end usually was really, really high just because I knew I could pop the cooldown earlier, but I could also wait until other things might sync even better. Like if I know I'm gonna have all of my cooldowns used at you know at one point, as long as I get all of the use of that cooldown before the fight ends, it doesn't matter where in that minute I use that, my 2-minute cooldown, because I'm not going to get another use of it after or anything, so I don't have to care about that. But then you can try syncing it with other things that are out of your control, like a proc trinket, rather than, you might be able to trink like your proc trinket with your on-use trinket, or, some other external buff type thing. Like, you can, as like a hunter, you can make sure you have like, maximum focus and, any other resource, whatever that you can do to make that damage window as high as it can possibly be. Alright, well, I think that is all that I have to cover that. Can anyone have any questions? Let me double check. Alright, no new questions at the moment. Again, if you did want to send something in, exclamation point submit in chat. You can do that at any point, whether I'm streaming or not. That will get this link posted for you from my Nightbot. Again, just click the link. You can optionally put in your name, server, any of that sort of stuff. You don't have to. That's mainly like if you need me to look up like your logs or something, and you don't have a link to it, I can find you that way. But yeah, just fill out that bottom section with whatever your question is. Again, I'm willing to help out with anything. Doesn't matter what it is. Anything well related, I'd say, in the most part. But just let me know. I guess that is going to be it for tonight. Thank you all for watching. I forgot to upload last week's stream to YouTube, but I'll make sure to do that shortly, and then I'll get this one uploaded as well. But yeah, if obviously anyone who's listening to this is probably watching the stream, but in case you missed the beginning, it'll be there. Right now you could even go watch it on the Twitch VODs. But if, that only lasts for 2 weeks, so that's why I upload it also to YouTube. And you can see my YouTube name right here on the screen. Right next to my face. Alright, well, again, thanks everyone for watching. Feel free to, pass on the stream to, your guilds or friends, anyone else you think it might help. And anyone who puts, sends in questions, I'll try to answer for anyone. So, thank you again, and have a good night.